How can we help solve the children's mental health crisis in America? Our guest today is Kim Tschirret. She is the founder of Hope Reins, which is a 38-acre horse sanctuary in Raleigh, North Carolina. And they specifically are focused on helping children to seek hope and healing through the interaction with horses. This is amazing. I actually read a book about her, which is called Joey, and it is written by Jennifer Marshall Bleakley. And it's really an inspiring story. In fact, I have gotten copies and shared it with others. It's just a beautiful story. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about her story, and we're going to talk about what they're doing. And I think it's going to be really impactful. We'll explore the healing power of horses, mentors, Jesus, how that trifecta comes together to solve this mental health crisis for kids in particular across the nation. And Kim, we're just really excited to have you here today. Thanks for being here.
Nicole. Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we go any further, let's do a shout out to Interview Valet. Tom
Hmm.
and Karen and their team have been awesome. I think they've been supporting this show like right from the beginning
Hmm.
in 2015 or early on, and just sending us amazing guests. And so thank you to them for making this introduction. You're the reason why we're able to have this conversation. So thank
Hmm.
you. So Kim, talk to us a little bit about how this idea was birthed inside you. Why you?
Hmm. Yeah, why me? Yeah, well, it really goes back to my childhood, that I grew up in Ohio in an upper middle class home, and everything looked really good. My dad was a very successful businessman, but what people didn't know is that he was an alcoholic and very emotionally and verbally abusive. And I don't ever remember feeling safe as a little girl in my home. And I was the youngest. I had an older brother and sister, 7 years older. And it was always very confusing. I never understood like what was happening, why my dad was always so angry. And for those people who maybe grew up with addiction, that it's very shameful and it's very hidden. And we were never allowed to discuss it. And anytime I brought it up, I was told everything's fine. So I really internalized that. And my message as a kid was that there was something wrong with me. And I think that's very typical. We see that with the kids that we serve here at our ranch. When something happens in their life, they often tend to think it's their fault, right? And not understanding, being able to see the bigger picture. And for some reason, I think because it looked good, my dad bought me a horse. And so I remember going to the barn and sitting in my horse's stall while he was eating hay and just pouring my heart out to my horse about what was happening in my life. And so I was kind of our first session kid, so to speak. And I just remember that comfort and that connection and the safety that I felt at the barn and with my horse. And many years later, lots in between, I really felt God calling me to do something, and I wasn't sure what it was, and ended up picking up a book about an organization in Oregon doing something similar, and just knew that was it. And that was actually Nicole in the recession in 2009. So that's its own story, the timing of all of it.
Yeah, actually, yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and then we'll circle back and unpack what we're talking about, with children, the experience that they have, and
Yeah.
go, but yeah, so talk a little bit about that because yeah,
Yeah.
there's just
It's really
extraordinary.
extraordinary timing. I spent a couple of years really trying to do some discovery, praying and seeking, like, God, what do you have for me? And once I picked up this book, I just knew, the connection, my own story. It just felt like this was the right thing to do. And all of my friends, my family, everybody was like, you're crazy. Like, businesses are going under. You can't start a nonprofit. The number one thing they kept telling me was you're never going to find land because land is just a huge commodity here where we live in Raleigh. There's not a lot of open pasture in convenient places. And that was the very first thing God took care of. My husband and I took our kids on an Easter egg hunt to a property that this church owned in a prime location in Raleigh. And they ended up donating 20 acres of land to us before we had a name, before we were incorporated, really before I ever even knew that this was going to be the thing that we were doing, God just sort of took care of the thing everybody kept saying was going to be our biggest obstacle. So it was
Yeah.
really incredible.
And there's such a lesson in that. And I've had that lesson in my life, and I've seen it in others as well, where
Mhm.
when we trust and we just step out in faith, that God will provide, but he's waiting for us to take that step of faith first, right?
Yes.
It's like step out on the water,
Yep.
and then we'll be able to stand. He'll provide the way from there.
Absolutely.
And
The
wow.
Red Sea parted when they stepped
Amen.
out. So you're totally right. But it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to see and can be scary, but trust is a big part of it.
How do you know that, like, where it's not just a good idea
Mhm.
and you're thinking, oh, I want to do this thing, versus when you know that God is leading you to do it, then it's the right time to make a step.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think over the years, what I've seen is kind of the three things that I always do is I pray, seek, and wait, right? And they're actively happening for me, at least personally, all at the same time. I think waiting on God sometimes is not doing anything, but in my experience, it's been praying, seeking different things, and waiting to see what door He opens has been my go-to. And so I think that combination over the years has really helped. And I know that maybe many leaders listening, you've gotten into situations where you feel like you're kind of beating your head against the wall, like, why is this not working? Those are always the moments that I have to step back and ask myself, am I trying to make this happen in my own will? Am I not paying attention? And that slowing down and looking and seeing where is God working, what doors are opening, what doors are closing, and really continuing to seek Him has been really helpful to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there's sometimes where there's resistance and you got to push through the
Hmm.
resistance. And then there's other times where God's like, no, that's not actually what I
Yeah.
have. And it's
Yes.
discerning between those two. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And when you
Yeah.
don't know, then just wait and keep praying, right? It's
Mhm.
that combination.
I think that's hard for us. I mean, I know for me, I'm in the process of launching this platform, building this platform to be able to launch it. And, my timing, it would have already been done, right? Like,
Yes.
let's go, let's do this. And as I've been working on it, God's like, yeah, it's good. Yeah, but there's something, like he's shifting my perspective
Yeah.
so that when I approach it, I'm approaching it from a different perspective. And so it's just waiting, like you said, waiting
Yeah.
and trusting. Again, this word comes up, trust, right? It's trusting that um, that his timing is perfect, because we
Yes.
sometimes think, well, I'm going to miss out on something, or I'm falling behind, or
Mhm.
now, and there's other times where it's like he's saying, you need to go and you need to do something, right? like
Yes.
like so
Yep.
you gotta know where that is. So for
Yeah.
some of us, it's hold on, wait for my timing, and other times it's like you need to step out and do
Yeah, and I think it's
something.
so hard sometimes with personalities. Like I'm an 8 Enneagram. I'm a driver. I want to, like you said, get out there and get things done. But I've just learned enough that that's where my exhaustion comes from. A lot of times
Yeah.
is when I'm running ahead of God and I'm not waiting for Him and following His lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, operating from a place of resting versus striving, that's
Yes.
definitely something he's been working on me and teaching me to learn, so that I can also help other entrepreneurs do that as well.
Yeah,
So good.
absolutely.
Well, let's talk about horses. And
Mhm.
you had your experience growing up.
Mhm.
And so you gravitated to horses. But what
Mhm.
makes them so perfect for this?
Yeah, what a great question. The way God created them, they are so sensitive to human moods and emotions. They say there's studies that a horse will oftentimes be able to sense what you feel before you've even processed it. They
Wow.
always when you hear people say, "Oh, don't let the horse know you're scared." Which is impossible, right? Because you're feeling this fear and maybe you don't even know you're feeling it and they already sense it and they're going, what's happening, what's wrong, why are you scared? They're always
Mm,
looking for safety and leadership, is really, really important. They live as a family in a herd, unnaturally the way that we do. Being in their presence can lower your heart rate, anxiety, depression. There's so many, physical and emotional benefits. And the really cool thing is horses never lie. They're always honest. They live in the present all the time. They
Mm,
never worry about the future. They never ruminate on the past. They just live in the present moment, eating hay or hanging out or whatever it is that they're doing. And they're really very relational animals. So those are really some of the really big reasons. And they boost our confidence too. When you see a 6-year-old kid leading a 1,200-pound animal, it's really a remarkable thing.
yeah. I
Yeah.
remember from this book that, which by the way, congratulations, this book has been so successful
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're
and
super blessed.
amazing. And the thing that one of the things that was surprising from the horse's standpoint in that relationship was the relationship between the horses. And when one of the horses, died, then the other one, how much they missed
Yes.
that other horse.
Yep.
And wow,
Yep.
and you get their feelings. I think sometimes we forget that animals have feelings,
They
and
do.
it's really important to take
Yeah.
care of them, which from your perspective, you're taking care of the kids, you've got mentors and people that are working with you to do that, and supporting the children through the process. And then
Hmm.
you've also got the horses and managing them, and I know you've got rescue horses and all
Hmm.
of that going on. And
Yep.
wow, there's a lot to
Hmm.
manage there. And so I was going to go into this a little bit later, but let's talk a little bit about some of the leadership lessons that you've learned in that process.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, I think I've learned a ton of humility,
Mm,
and really our culture that we've really tried to build here at Hope Reins is one where we our core values are not something that hang on the wall, right? Jesus heals is number one. We can't fix anybody. We can't heal these kids. Our horses don't heal these kids. And so when we hear the stories, these really very heavy, burdensome stories of these kids that are coming up our driveway, we have to give that to God, right? And we've seen in 15 years that there's nothing beyond God's redemption. There's just nothing
amen.
beyond his ability to heal, right? Being authentic is a huge one out here for us. And really, we bring all of ourself to work, right? And so when maybe we're having issues with each other, we will always spend time connecting, like what's the real issue or what's really happening, instead of talking about like living in our emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know each other well enough that if somebody is not acting the way they normally do, that we can stop and say, hey, like, what's happening right now, and are you doing okay? And oftentimes there's something underneath that. And horses also, like I said, they're looking for safety, and so they're looking for strong leadership. They want to know there's a head of the herd, and that's who they look to anytime they're feeling scared or if something's happening. And isn't it the same way, in an organization that people want to feel confidence
Yeah.
in their leaders? But I feel like when we can be really authentic, it breeds so much trust and so much safety, at least in our staff, to be really open and authentic about what's really happening, because people intuitively know when something's not right or something's going on, or
Yeah.
they have, yeah, yeah. So those are probably some of the big ones. And really just, again, letting God lead. I had a period of time when we bought our current property that I was having panic attacks, and I was trying like all of this stuff. It was just overwhelming. And I was trying, like you mentioned earlier, striving, doing all of it in my own will. And I recognized in myself, hey, God, you know what? I really don't trust you, right? I have
Yeah.
a huge father wound, from the way that I grew up. And I've always been really okay with Jesus, but God the Father, it has taken me a long time to really trust him for my own safety and that he really loves me and I'm valued because he created me and not for anything that I can perform or do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that where we lack trust in ourselves, we lack trust in others. Essentially, we're lacking trust in God, the
Yeah.
Father, who, and upbringing, different experiences, of course, is going to further that. But it's this. I was talking to somebody on the weekend, and he was saying, "Is I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I've never done this before."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, the good news is you don't need to know. God knows."
Yeah.
But when you have walked, through life on your own, trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
then your inclination is like, even so often I know in my own life, it's like I'm asking God to bless me in the areas that I'm working and striving hard
Mm-hmm.
versus the areas where he is actually looking to bless me. When I was in my 20s, I was praying and I'm praying, I'm like, God, and he's like, will you stop telling me where to bless you?
Oh
Let me
man.
handle
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, I never even thought of that, because
Yeah.
it's like this: work like it depends on me, pray like it depends on God. But it's like there is some truth to that, in a way of like getting into action, and being active, an active participant, right,
Mm-hmm.
in your life.
Yeah.
And making, whether I make that first or whether I make God first, and God
Mm-hmm.
leads me in the things that he wants me to do. And so I don't have to work as hard.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so
and
good.
I grew up, doing that performance thing for my dad, and it's so ingrained. It's so hard to stop performing for your
Yeah,
value. So that's yeah,
yeah,
really,
that's
really.
good. Let's talk about the kids.
Hmm.
And how do you work with them? What is kind of like the process? They're coming in. Are they, are they excited to be there? Maybe some are, probably some are not.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you walk them through this healing process?
Yeah, so Hope Reins, just to share our mission, we pair kids that are experiencing trauma and life crisis with horses that have been rescued and a mentor. And so, what we are is a mentorship program. Everything we do is very relational and very one-on-one. And the kids find us primarily through word of mouth. All of our families refer kids, and then we have partners that we connect with that bring kids to us. And we have really one requirement for our children, the kids and teens that we serve, and then one for our parents. The child or teen has to want to be here because we know that if they don't say yes, then they're not ready to heal. And so many of them, their boundaries have been completely violated, and they had no say in what happened to them. It's sexual abuse, physical abuse, abandonment, suicide. I mean, there's so many different tragic things that they've experienced. And we want them to have a voice. We want them to, when they come for the very first time, we take them on a tour at our ranch, which we call a safe refuge. And if you guys walked onto our property, I think you would feel that. It's very peaceful. The horses are healthy and happy. And safety is the number one thing that these kids need, because if they don't feel safe, they can't trust and they can't begin to heal. And so we take them on a tour and we introduce them to the horses. And most of the time, one of the stories of a horse's rescue, of their abuse and neglect and abandonment, connects with them. And then every once in a while, a horse chooses a child, which is really, really a special moment. And then our parents, the caregivers, they're required to stay here during a session. A session is a 90-minute time frame once a week where the child comes and they get paired with the same horse and the same mentor. And we're a skills-based program. And we're working on trust, communication, boundaries, and leadership. They're the four things that horses teach humans. And they also happen to be the four things that Harvard said kids need to build resiliency in their trauma. And so that's kind of how our program works and what we do.
I love that. You mentioned resiliency. Talk a little bit about why resiliency is so important
Yeah, it is
in
really
healing
vital.
from trauma. Yeah. trauma.
So resiliency, just in the simplest terms, is just your ability to bounce back, right? Because
Hmm.
these kids are going to continue to have hard things, in their life. But Harvard they did a huge study many years ago, and they studied kids who bounced back in their trauma. What was it that they had that made the difference? Some kids bounce back. Some kids become the incarcerated, the homeless, the drug addicted, and the mentally ill, right? That don't heal from their trauma.
Yeah.
And the number one thing that they found, Nicole, was that kids in trauma need one stable, safe adult relationship in their life.
Mm.
That could be a teacher, that could be a neighbor, that could be a grandparent, and that can be a horse. And for us, it's a horse and a mentor. And they really need, they want to know that they have a purpose, right? That they have value, that what they communicate matters, and so those are really the core things that we teach them. And Harvard has tied that again to the healthy coping skills that we teach them that they then can use as adults. We've got our 15th year anniversary coming next year, and we're featuring 15 of our alumni who are now healthy, thriving adults. And that's what they talk about, Nicole, is the skills that they learned in our program, and they still use those today, and what a difference it's made in their life.
Well, I think of adults, and there's a lot of talk about resiliency in the workplace
Mm-hmm.
and how important that is. And then as you were talking, it reminded me of last week we had a seventh grader locally here that committed suicide
Mm.
and had experienced bullying, and so I heard about it through the grapevine, and I'm involved a little bit with the youth program that we have at our church and seeing some of the things that kids are going through, and I'm like, wow, right? Like with that resiliency, I mean, one kid can get bullied and grow stronger even in the midst of that. Another kid, if they don't have that resiliency,
Right.
doesn't see
Or
hope
that safe
or
relationship,
safe
or yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think about, I had a gentleman on my show a number of years ago, Rich Donovan, and he has cerebral palsy. And when he went to school, he got he got made fun of like really
Yeah.
early on.
Yeah.
And he came home and his dad said to him, he said, Rich, this is going to happen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to handle it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that safe person who said,
Yeah.
okay. And I know his mom as well, right? But it's like they were like, okay, how are you going to deal with that? Right.
Yeah.
Let's help you to deal with
Absolutely.
that because it's probably not going to change,
Yeah, and
unfortunately.
the enemy just wants us to feel like we're alone and that we're the only person that's going through what we're experiencing. And that isolation is really, really challenging. And part of our program is a peer-to-peer relationship as kids kind of graduate from their one-on-one mentorship, because we want them to know there are other kids your age that are going through the same thing,
Yeah.
right? Because that feels safe, right? That
Yeah.
feels like, oh gosh, you can relate to me, and they connect about their trauma, and it's really an amazing thing.
Yeah. So when you're talking about trust, they build trust with the horses and with the
Hmm.
mentor. How do you build that trust?
Yeah.
And I ask that question because I think there's levels of trust, right? We go through, right? And I think when something happens, you experience abuse, betrayal, whatever it is, that you get to that point where you're like, I don't trust you.
Hmm.
And then there's
Yeah.
this layer of, I trust, I'd like to trust you. Maybe I trust you in this little area, but I don't trust you over here. It's like us
Yes.
with God, we were talking about earlier. It's like, God, I
Absolutely.
trust you over here, but I don't trust you over there.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
versus the ultimate, which is I absolutely trust
Hmm.
and I feel it
Hmm.
safe, that psychological safety, that emotional safety. So
Yeah.
yeah, how do you build that? Because
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of broken trust in the world right now, and people trying to
There
figure out how do I
is.
rebuild that.
Yeah, and it's exactly like you said, in layers. And in fact, the example that you gave, so we have, based on trust, communication, boundaries, and leadership, we have over 100 different tools that our mentors will use in a session. And one of them is the trust circle. And we will actually sit in a session in the arena or wherever and build these circles of trust. And then the mentor will say, oh, here are the people that are in my inner circle of trust or my outer or these outer circles of trust. And we kind of describe what those mean. And then we ask the client that we're working with the same questions like where is God, or where are your parents, and where are your brothers and sisters and your friends, and it just gives us more insight into the relationships that they have in their life, and who they do trust. And then having that basis, we can continue to work on certain types of skills to help them build that trust. But really, it all starts with the horse and their story. I mean, that is always the bridge, because the kids will come and they're so shut down, Nicole. You can see it in their eyes. And I don't know what it is about the third session is what a parent tells us that they really start to open up more. We see it, and then what they hear from their child is maybe more excitement to come here and talking specifically about something that happened, or I can't wait to get back to Hope Reins. And it just takes some time, but having that animal that's not a person, right? And having that initial bridge really helps them to initially start feeling safe and then start making some connections with their mentor. So the mentor is then able to come in and share a little bit of their story, right? We're honest with our kids about, hey, I've had really hard things happen in my life too, and let me tell you a little bit about my story appropriately, obviously. But that really, again, being that authentic, makes that connection and really continues to breed that safety and trust.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. Tell us a few of the stories, or that maybe give us an example. Like, I loved the stories in the book,
Yeah.
and the little girl, and she was not even talking,
Yes.
and just some
Yeah,
of
well,
those.
actually, if you don't mind, if I can share that one, because
Go for it.
I have an update on her. I mentioned next year is going to be our 15th anniversary, and we've got 15 alumni that are so excited to come back and share their story and the transformation that Hope Reins had in their life. And in the book, Joey was one of our very first rescued horses who was blinded from starvation. And all of our horses, the way we work with them is nonverbal cues, the way we do our training and our connecting with them. And a little girl named Allie, who had been waiting to get in, she was 4 years old when she first applied, had to turn 5. So her mom was waiting, and she was mute, selectively mute from her own abuse, and entered our program at age 5, and communicated to her mom that she wanted to work with Joey. And what we had to work with Allie on is understanding, hey, that's great if you want to work with Joey. He only can be worked with using voice commands. And so here, this little girl had to make a decision. Was she going to risk speaking again in order to work with the horse that she really wanted to work with? And it's this beautiful story of how she learned to trust and speak with the blind horse, right? And teaching us that blind faith and connection. And she ended up going into Toastmasters in high school. If you're familiar with Toastmasters, which is the speaking
Wow.
club, which is really incredible. And she's in college now. She is thriving and doing so well. She's on the rowing team at the college that she's at, and she can't wait to come back and be able to share her testimony of the transformation of what happened here at Hope Reins. And so it's really, really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. It must be so rewarding, and like you said in the beginning, God does the healing,
Yes.
and we can be his hands, we can be his feet, we can be his mouthpiece,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's so cool. It must be so rewarding to see
It
that.
is so, yeah,
Yeah.
it is really rewarding. And it's just God gets all the glory because we
Yeah.
just can't make this stuff up. So
Well, and if it was only for that one girl, it was worth it, you know.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then there's
Well,
so many. I mean, you've worked with thousands of kids
oh
now.
yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Over 25,000 free of charge. Our program is
Wow.
completely free to our families in 15 years. And this year alone we'll serve 300 kids.
Wow.
And yeah, more than half the kids we serve live at or below the poverty line. And man, Nicole, mental health crisis has never been worse, and they have
Mm,
nowhere to go. So
yeah.
it's really, really vital that we have open access for these kids.
So how do you scale that? It's a good transition into talking about the model for how do you scale that from your ranch. You can only serve so many kids.
Yep. Yeah.
So I know you're working on training
We
and
we are, yeah. We've had such a burden for so long about how do we help more kids. The vision God gave us is true hope and real healing for every child, which we didn't know how are we going to do that in Raleigh. And really, the Joey book, becoming so successful, has created a lot of awareness. And we have people from around the world that have called us and said, "Would you help me start something similar?" And so we're big beta testers out here. We test everything. And so we did some virtual training for a while and had some people open their doors. And just this past year, we launched our academy, and we have the essentials, which is the first phase of our academy. Think about everything you need for the first 0 to 3 years to start a similar ministry. We're going to teach you that. It's a 22 videos, all on a learning management system, with tons of resources and webinars and different, support and help from us. But our heart and our goal is to give away what God has taught us. Not that we're perfect, but learn from our mistakes, right?
yeah,
So that we can help more kids have access to hope and healing in their community. And there are 36 people already that have signed up. We probably have a dozen organizations that launched just from our virtual training. We have a lady from Iceland that's in our program right now. So
amazing.
it's really, really exciting to see how we can help impact the bigger mental health crisis by helping more people have access.
All from an idea, right? That people
Mhm.
told you, you're crazy, you can't do this,
Yes.
and
Yep.
here you are.
Yep.
That's amazing being
Yep.
able to impact lives like that.
Yep.
So yeah, I had a young woman who I've mentored who was telling me over the summer, I hadn't talked to her for a little while, and she was catching up. She was like, "Oh, I'm working at this horse farm or with kids and so forth." I was like, "Wait a second." And so I asked her if it was connected,
Mhm.
and she said it wasn't, but it might have been somebody who learned from you or somebody
Yeah,
else that was
it
doing
could
the
have
same
been.
thing. And there's
Yeah.
just, it was so cool, even to see her as an adult
Yeah.
bringing her experience and her skill set. She likes to
Yes.
work with wood, and she's this cute little fireball, and and she likes dirt bikes, and she's an electrician, and she's
That
so
is
she's very
so
handy,
cool.
so she's
Yeah.
bringing all those things in. And they'd asked her,
Yeah.
said, "Hey, can you come and help?" And she's had abuse in her upbringing, so she can relate to that very well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was so cool to see. And she was lit up,
Yes.
to be able to be part of that. It was so cool to see that. And I said to her,
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking to Kim from Hope Reins. And so we were talking
I love
about
that.
what you guys are up to. And so,
That's really
yeah,
sweet. That's really
so
sweet.
good. Well, so how do you realistically, this takes money.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you fund this type of initiative?
Yeah.
Is it government funded? Is it privately held?
Mhm.
Family foundations? How do you do it?
Yeah, we are funded 100% by just personal donations. So
Okay.
it's people. It could be somebody's family foundation. The funny thing is, we always said we're never going to take government funding because we're very faith based, and we don't want there to be any
Yeah.
anything attached to that. And God has a sense of humor. He brought the United States Department of Agriculture to help us purchase the land that we own right now. So we have a loan through them, but there's no strings attached to that. But yeah, it's just the generosity of people. And it's interesting, Nicole, because it's not necessarily horse people. It's people who have a real passion for kids that are hurting, who themselves have some connection to trauma. We
Yeah.
hear all the time as we pick up the phone and call and thank people and work with our donors that they have their own personal connection to trauma, and they care a lot about making sure that these kids experience healing so that they can have a healthy, productive life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in your program, you help the people that are going through that academy how to
Mhm.
raise money, how to do all
We
of
do.
that as
Yeah.
well.
We help
Okay.
them with fundraising and the
Yeah.
basics and building a business plan and, just really getting a real solid foundation
Awesome.
for that. Yeah.
That's
Yep.
good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure that the links are in the show notes to that. I think you actually have a welcome page specifically
Yeah, I
for.
do.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I can share that. If people want to go to Hope Reins, reins.org /podcast, where actually you can sign up to get on our newsletter, which every week we just mail a story out of what's happening at the ranch. So if the stories touch you and you want to hear more, we also are offering people free downloads of the book, Joey, the book that you have, Nicole, we're offering for
Okay.
people.
That's
And they
awesome.
can find out more about the essentials, which is our academy. If they know somebody that maybe has had that horsey dream, they can come and learn more about how we can help them start something similar.
Awesome. Kim, this is so great. I love what you're doing. And there's a huge need. There's
There is a huge
such a
need.
huge need.
Nicole, can I say just one other
Please.
need?
Yeah.
We've got 80 kids right now that are on the wait list for our program. And so if this has touched you and you're interested in providing support again, we don't charge our kids and families for these services. We just want to make sure as we head into this holiday and this time of giving that our kids
Yeah.
have the ability to be able
Yeah.
to come and find healing out here at our ranch. So
Yeah. Absolutely. And we'll promote that as well so that, yeah, we can get it out to even more people to hear that and to be able to support what you guys are doing. I just, yeah,
thank
love
you.
it.
Yeah, really
Absolutely love
appreciate
it.
it.
And just more of this. This is what we need,
Yes.
more of this.
Yeah.
And I always say if we can help young people to heal, then we don't have to wait until they're adults, right? And
Absolutely.
then because it just compounds and you build patterns and habits, and it's just becomes a little harder, you know,
Absolutely.
to
That's what we're all
heal.
about.
Hmm.
Yep. Yep.
And generationally, interrupt the pattern generationally. There's so much here, like in terms
There
of
is.
why this is so important,
Yes,
to do
absolutely.
this.
So they have a
So,
resilient tomorrow, resilient future.
amen.
Yep.
Amen.
Yep.
Thank you so much. And you know what? I didn't ask you to, beforehand, but I'm sure this will be fine. I'm sure this is up, you've done this with your team. Is Would you like to pray for our listeners?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
would love that. I would be
And
so
and
honored.
their God-given ideas that they're looking at birthing as well
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Well, Father, we come before you, and I just thank you for Nicole and her courage to step out and launch this podcast and this platform that she's working on, Lord. I pray that you would bless that, and just all those that are listening, Lord, that they would trust you, Lord. They would put you first. They would remember to set you continually before them, and that you're at their right hand, Lord, and they won't be shaken, Lord, because we know that when we focus on you, Jesus, that we won't be shaken. And so I pray for great courage. I pray for healing in this journey. Some people are going to need to find some healing along the way, Lord. And that in everything that they do, that they would honor and glorify you in your great name, Lord. And we love you and we thank you and we lift all this up in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
That's
Kim.
my psalm right now. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. That's so good.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. I'm excited
Thank
to share
you.
this.
Yeah, thank
And
you, Nicole.
yeah, and we'll get this out. We'll make sure that everyone has the links so that they can learn more, that they can support and follow the journey and continue to be inspired. And I always say leaders of transformation take action.
Hmm.
Sometimes that action is waiting,
Yes,
right? Praying, waiting, seeking, waiting.
waiting. Hmm.
And, and there's an active part of that, right? In
Hmm.
doing that, wait upon the Lord. And so I just encourage our listeners. And if you're out there and you're thinking, wow, this is amazing, I'd love to do something like this, or I have an idea and this has inspired me, just
Yep.
step out, take that one step out of faith, in faith, out into the water and
Yes,
just watch what God does.
absolutely.
Watch what he does. And
Yep.
so we'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leaderstransformation.com reach out to us there. Of course, we're all across social as well. And we'd love to hear stories of how God showed up in your life. It showed up in that walk of faith that you're on. And if there's anything that we can do to support you along that journey, please let us know that as well. And of course, go to hopereins.org/podcast to be able to get all of the resources and connect to Kim and her team and what they're doing there. So thanks for being here. Thank you again, Kim. And we just look forward to continuing this journey with you. And we look forward to seeing all of you again next week on another episode of The Leader's Transformation. Thanks again.